as Sarah mentioned, this is the WOHASU Holistic Wellbeing Leadership Certification Program, which is a first of its kind program in the country, piloting here in Miami, the third largest school district in the country with over 350,000 students. And hopefully this will serve as a national blueprint at a time when this work, as we all know, is needed now more than ever. So with that, Karen, let's start with you. As the founder of WOHASU, what compelled you to pilot this work in the first place and to do so here in Miami in partnership with Arthur and Dr. Dotres?
Well, I was first meeting Arthur and connecting with Arthur, and Arthur is a mad scientist, as I am. And so we started to think about how we can bring this to as many people as possible and how to change systems. And as you know, our vision is to promote this at scale, promote the science at scale, and make people happiness teachers. And then a very good friend of mine, Bob Martinez, hosted us for lunch and introduced us to the visionary superintendent of the Miami-Dade County School District, because I just want to give a round of applause. Because when you say things are difficult or they can't be done, or in this place or in that place is complicated, and how do we do this? He said yes. And he saw the vision of holistic education, for children and for just a culture of well-being for principals and teachers, and how can we optimize the human experience, and education is so important. Arthur talks about that as well, and higher education, and then we have, of course, the schools, and who are the CEOs of those schools? Those are the principals. And so this certification program is for school principals, because we need our leaders to be happy and to be well. And so I'm so excited about this program. It's never been done before, and I'm just in awe that we could manage to do something like this, and it was relatively easy to get it going. That was because of you and your team.
Really amazing. So speaking of the intersection of happiness and schools and community, Arthur, as a global leader in the science of well-being and in teaching happiness specifically, how should we and policymakers across the country be thinking about that intersection between happiness and school and culture?
Thanks, Isa. And I know that the superintendent is going to talk a little bit about the vision of this program and exactly how we're executing it. And that's going to be important because a lot of you have the ability in your communities to do something like that. So the screwdrivers and hammers of actually how it's getting done, that's important. And we want to make sure that we're going to talk about that today. But the philosophy behind that is basically twofold. I'm a happiness teacher for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I believe that each of us has an ethical responsibility in the leadership in our lives to be happier people, to work on becoming happier people. And I don't say that lightly. A lot of people think that happiness is sort of a nice thing to have. No, it's your ethical responsibility if you lead anybody, because here's news, nobody wants to work for a miserable person. Nobody wants to be married to a miserable person. Nobody wants to have a parent who's unhappy. And so if you have any leadership over anybody else, the ethical kind of leadership is for you to start by putting on your own oxygen mask and working to be a happier person. And that's why I teach a class at Harvard called Leadership and Happiness, which tries to make happier leaders and make leaders into happiness teachers, which gets sort of into the second big point, philosophical point behind what we're doing in the school district and what we're doing with all of our work with WOHASU and trying to get out to the world, which is there's sort of a three-part formula to becoming happier in your own life. The first part is understanding. So it's not a feeling. Stop looking for feelings. Happiness isn't a feeling. Your feelings aren't there to make you happy. Your feelings are there to give you signals about the world. That's what emotions are for in the limbic system of the brain. It's not a feeling, thank God, because you don't have to worry about your feelings. You need to do the work by actually understanding, which is why we try to bring science to a big audience. The second point, and the second part of the algorithm to getting happier, is you need to change habits and make a commitment. You got to put these ideas into action, into practice, which is why everything that I do starts with science and then leads to actual practices. And the last part is, to become a happier person, you actually have to teach it. You don't have to suffer through a PhD like I did, but you do need to figure out who you're going to explain this to, which is why I always talk about when I'm doing my work that, you know, the PowerPoint slides that I use, people can go download them, but they have to put their name on the slides and take my name off, and find some way to actually give the lecture in their own words, because when you become the teacher, you get happier. And that's a very, very well-studied phenomenon. It's actually called the plastic platypus method, believe it or not, and that's because language teachers learned that when they would have students of language who were very imperfect in English, actually teaching English to a plastic platypus on the table, they learned English faster. And so here's the deal. If you take it seriously, learn the science, change your habits, and teach other people around you, whether it's your kids or your actual students, or whether it's your coworkers, whether it's your church, whatever it happens to be, you're gonna become a happier person, and in so doing, you'll be living up to your ethical responsibility to be the person that you're supposed to be. And we're trying to figure out now how to take that at scale to the center of leadership in our communities, which is administrators, principals, and sooner or later teachers. Which leads us to the superintendent, I suppose, but back to you, Isa.
That is correct. And so, you know, speaking of which, yesterday we focused really heavily on the concept of hope. Today we're focusing more on community. And Dr. Dotres, just based off of what Arthur just shared, we're going to get to your strategic vision for the district in a couple minutes, but first and foremost, why was it so important to you to pilot this certification program with the principals versus with students or teachers, as an example?
Thank you. The principals in every school district are key to change. Principals have the ability to create the best environments for the teachers. I've always said that. I was a former principal, by the way, so I never take that hat off, and it's always important for me. And so you have a great responsibility for the teachers that are basically leading the children. And so when you create the best environment possible for teachers, there's a simple saying that when teachers are happy, the kids are happy. But, right? But in order to get there, because some folks carry their happiness innately, and there's nothing much that we can do because that's who they are. However, others need encouragement and need support. And the greatest way of doing that and impacting and influencing an environment, a school, is through the school leader. So we as a school district, we invest heavily on their development. Well, there's a technical and professional development that's important, but we cannot forget that with the stress and with everything that they're dealing with, we have to start investing in their well-being and also in their ability to be able to create an environment of well-being in the particular school. So the way I think about it is we have this macro level, our school district, over 350 schools. But at the end of the day, it's these individual schools, these micro communities that are going to really be impacting. And I've told the principals many times, and I'm really fortunate that we have an outstanding principal with us today, Deborah Darbone. She's sitting right there.
She is.
And
Bravo, Deborah.
And so we have to start with them because they have the ability to impact and influence that school, that community like no one else does. And so that's why starting with the principal is really important because the impact can cascade down to teachers, to staff, and that is really critical. And I think as a superintendent, all of my first efforts in creating an initiative or creating some type of change, it starts with them, the school principal.
So given the scale of our school district as the third largest in the country, and as a result, the incredible impact and influence that can have not only in our community, but nationally, how does this program specifically align with your broad strategic vision, and what does success look like down the line?
Absolutely. So it is completely aligned to our vision of well-being and looking after the well-being and school cultures that we're trying to build in our schools. This world of schools only serving the academic side of students is not working. It is not working. More than ever, we have to attend to the academic, the physical, and the mental well-being of each and every one of our students. And so when we invest and when we embrace and say that we have to have a holistic approach of how we engage with students and with teachers, the connection is kids and teachers. I cannot speak about students without speaking about how we're attending to teachers at the same time. So it is this holistic approach that becomes really, really important. And when we're doing it well, and we are attending to the well-being of our staff, principals, right? At the end of the day, we are going to get outcomes that are reflected either in a school climate survey where parents, students, and teachers say, what is this environment doing for me? How comfortable am I feeling? So we measure satisfaction in terms of the school setting, and one thing that is really important is measuring the satisfaction of teachers in the teaching and learning environment. And if I can just say a little quick story, and Deborah's here, she doesn't want me to put her on the spot, but I have to tell you. We had a cluster of schools that were going through a very difficult time because of the potential violence that was occurring in the community. And I had a meeting with over 30 principals. And one principal in particular started to speak about the struggles and some of the teachers even being afraid of coming into the school because of what was happening in the environment. And I have to tell you that one of the principal that spoke to me brought this to my attention in front of my entire cabinet. Just yesterday, we were at an event in Homestead, and he came up to me unsolicited, and he said, the happiness training that we have received has made a huge difference in me, and I need more. So we measure the outcomes. It's completely aligned to our vision of not only academics, but the well-being of the students, the well-being of our organization. And to be honest, as a result of this initiative, this engagement, really one of our core pillars, and I have Tabitha Facino, which really helped me bring this together here. And maybe one of our core pillars has to be that well-being is the way that we lead and measure success in our organization.
Really, really meaningful. And Arthur, I'd love to turn to you next because you've done such an incredible job throughout your career, not only making it cool to be happy, but also really helping folks understand the correlation between the science and the research and the outcomes in a way that has made it easier for folks who otherwise wouldn't prioritize happiness to do so. And so share a little bit more with us, please, about how you do that and how you do it at scale.
Well, taking it to scale is always the tricky thing because the people who are most interested in the science of happiness are often the people who need it the least. The people who actually are going to longevity doctors and taking supplements are the people who are actually most serious about their health to begin with, and that's always a self-selection problem in anything that we try to do that's a positive intervention into people's lives. So that's the key. That's why going to the schools is so critically important, because you have to find some way to attract people who are part of a captured audience As opposed, look, I mean, I love you. But what we need are the people who aren't here. That's what we need, right?
Yep.
So when we're doing this work, one of the ways that you can actually get to get to people who wouldn't ordinarily be attentive to this is to say things that they don't expect, to say truths that they don't quite expect, things that are a little out of the ordinary, or maybe to say things that people thought they knew that aren't right. And I'll give you a couple of examples of the way that I think that when we're dealing with young people, I deal with people in higher ed, but more and more younger people as well, the truths that are false. There's a couple of movements that we've seen over the past decade. And by the way, you might have noticed that we're spending more and more time talking about well-being, more and more time talking about mood disorders and mental illness, and it's getting worse at the same time. We're doing something wrong, folks. We're doing something wrong. And I'll give you a couple of examples of things that we're doing wrong that really get people's attention, including the people who most need to hear this. Number one, stop talking about self-care, start talking about other care, right? Seriously. I mean, at Harvard, you know, at Harvard where I teach, where I'm very privileged to teach, on really bad days, they don't talk about self-care. They talk about something called radical self-care. It's like, that's bad. No. We need to be radically serious about other people. And I know that we're actually going to get an example of other care, which is the ultimate form of self-care, and understanding that that is the basis of actually how we can build communities and we build our own lives. Here's another idea that I think is really important. We, over the past 15 years, in schools and in universities, have made a real wrong turn in treating mental health issues as if they were switches. They're not, they're dials. Every single one of you is depressed and anxious. Every single one of you. The question is, how high is the dial turned up? Whether or not you know how to turn the dial down so that your life becomes more manageable. We've been diagnosing young people as depressed or anxious, for example, as if there was something pathological and broken about them. If you're an adolescent and you're not feeling sadness and anxiety, you need therapy. That's life. You know, and so Isa's so kind to say, I'm making happiness cool. I want to make suffering cool. I want to make people fully alive. I want people to be taking a bite out of their lives and understanding that these feelings that I'm having are normal and they're evidence that I'm a human being on the planet. And I don't need to eliminate my suffering and act as if I should be sort of the bubble boy. No, that I should be able to manage these things, to live with others, to have a sense of love. And when you talk this way, to say, there's nothing wrong with you. You're okay. You're okay. We just need some new ways that you can learn about yourself. That starts to get the attention of people who would not ordinarily be in these seats, but we wish they were.
Really beautiful. All right, I'm going to ask each of you the same question now in our final almost 10 minutes. What are the top few things that each of you hopes that each school leader who participates in this program immediately has as a takeaway at a micro level? And at a macro level, what's your vision for how this shapes school leadership broadly? And Arthur, let's start with you.
Yeah, I want, well, and this is a grand vision, of course, and we're going to do what we can, but we sure have a good start here in Miami-Dade because of the superintendent and Karen. I want principals to see themselves as happiness professors, and their students are their teachers. I want them to embed a lot of the science into what they're actually talking about and to become enthusiastic about actually seeing well-being increases among their teachers, because that's actually how you get that leverage. And the way that they'll do that is by talking openly about many of the things that we're talking about here at that conference. I want this to become common parlance, normal vernacular in the leadership experience at the school level. I want to see that at the politician level too, but you know, I'm farther away on that.
Karen.
Well, first I want to shout out to I'm clicking here, if we can put the next slide. I want to show the cohort, the first 54 principals who were graduates in February. Can we pull up that slide if possible? And when you see that beautiful picture, there we go. That's our launch cohort. We have a QR code if you're interested in bringing this to other school districts, to individual schools, to systems if you're in another country. We can adapt, right, Arthur?
Oh, yeah.
We can adapt.
Oh, yeah.
Arthur speaks Spanish, by the way, perfectly.
We
So,
can do it. Any language you want, we can find
we
somebody.
can find
to get
it,
this done,
we can
yeah.
do it. And this is, we did this over 5 weeks, and we couldn't have done it without the superintendent, his team, and these courageous, and I'm gonna say courageous principals, because you know what? The first day, they were like, eh? The happiness, what? And what am I here, and what am I doing? And he said, you're just going. This is, and they were open-minded. They were present, they were in the moment, they allowed the information, and they began to practice it over time. And then it began spreading. And you know what is wonderful? So based on the science, but there's a lot that we didn't say, that they started to act. And they started to find places, like the places that you're mentioning, Arthur, that are more difficult or that are not necessarily quote unquote appropriate, but it's always appropriate. So in the classrooms, in their community, in their family, we didn't tell them specifically to do it. But you know what? It feels good to do good for other people. And so that is the multiplicative effect and the virus effect that we want. We want that for positivity, for helping, for seeing people, for forgiveness, for kindness, for acceptance. And when we create these spaces, then we change the way the world works. And you know what? Our kids deserve it. Our society deserves it. We deserve it. This is the one life we have in this one world we get. And I'm all for optimizing this human experience for all of us. And I encourage you to spread it. There's a QR code there. We did it on the fly, so put in your information if you want to receive more information about this wonderful program. We're going to certify all the principals in this district, and I challenge all the people seeing online to take it to your countries, and we'll meet you there.
It would make me so incredibly happy to see this in every school district across the country and in cities across the world. I mean, think about the ripple effects of that.
Yes.
It's huge. The WOHASU ripples. Dr. Dotres.
Yeah, so I'm incredibly proud of this first cohort because, to be honest with you, like Karen said, when we said happy training, what? And then I remember someone asking me, how are you going to get folks to buy into this? And I said, because we have to value the word happy and what it represents. And sometimes we work off of words, right? You always hear my happy place. Well, schools are happy places for a lot of children. They're the happy place also for teachers. And so what I hope to, number one, do is for the principals that they apply some of these very important elements to their own personal selves so that their well-being emerges in a very positive way. I worry about them every day. If we were to deal with an incident, something difficult, it will be in a school, and it will be the responsibility, or it will lie on the shoulders of a principal. And they go home to their families, and they have to respond to these realities. So they, being able to apply some of the elements for their own well-being is first in line. And then secondly, as a school district, in order to create these positive cultures, healthier students, families that are connected to them, it's not going to take only one thing or only one action, but rather a layer of approaches. And one thing that we just did this year that I'm incredibly proud of is for the first time we are able to introduce, free of cost, telehealth for all of our students in our school district. Yeah. So in this telehealth, it's about attending to the physical needs of the students while in school and then after school as well, so parents can connect with the doctor to resolve health issues for their children and not get stuck in waiting for an appointment and waiting. And that's one aspect. In telehealth as well, there is a mental health component to it as well. So parents can tap into, like, I love what Arthur said. You know, I have an 18-year-old at my house, right? And they go through all of these natural emotions. And so through our telehealth component, parents are going to be able to tap into mental health specialists to support their children. But that can't be all. So what I see is this certification and this training on happiness, and we're not going to stop at the principal level.
Yeah.
Then there are leadership teams within each school. So the training that we're doing on the happiness, backed up by research, which is so important, is this additional layer that, in my opinion, will strengthen the relationships that have to occur in schools between predominantly teachers and students. The greatest learning that occurs in a student's life is when there is a relationship with their teachers and in their schools. And more than ever, we know this. Students come to school and we need them to interact and engage with one another. And if they feel a sense of all of these positive elements related to happiness, we're gonna get them engaged, they're gonna be in school, and they will not be absent. Yes. And that's what we ultimately are doing, trying to do, create a culture of embrace, a culture of well-being, where the principals kind of are leading the charge and creating this important environment at the micro, but expanding it out to our entire school district.
Round of applause for that.
Yes, 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 yes.
I gotta say, you know, having grown up here in Miami, I think it's really, really awesome. And I'm very grateful to have you leading the charge in the role that you're in. We wanted to show you all this really cool chart that we saw for the first time this morning, co-created by Nami and Happy Coffee, who are here today, which says mental health is health. And I'm sure all of you have seen, you know, in break rooms and, you know, office kitchens, the OSHA flyer or the workers' comp flyer. How cool would it be to see this in break rooms across the country, starting in schools and everywhere else, with contextualizing information and then very practical what to do when you see signs of struggle or of, you know, negative mental health impacts. To be able to normalize this in alignment with the leadership vision that has been shared today is really, really exciting. So in our last minute together, Arthur, Karen, and Dr. Dotres, and let's start with you, Arthur. What's one thing you want the audience to walk away with? Nothing else.
Progress is possible. We're in the face of what we define as a mental health crisis, and that's an accurate way of portraying that, especially among young people. But the answer is really in our hands, and it really comes from the information that you're going to be bringing back from this incredible summit. The more that you can help people to understand that their future, their well-being, is in arm's reach, and has a lot to do with their knowledge and the work that they'll bring, and the communities that will actually build around these ideas, the world can get a lot better. We can actually be looking at the best time that we've ever seen, as a matter of fact, as opposed to worrying about things getting darker and worse. But that requires that all of us see ourselves as leaving here, going forward, as happiness professors. So please join us in this movement.
Well said, Arthur, thank you. I want to piggyback with that. I'm an action person, so I encourage you and I challenge you to act, to become an active participant of your life, like I said yesterday. So spread what you've heard here before, being said in this panel and before, and what you're here later. And you know what? There's no perfection. There's no perfect time. There's no, you know, then that's something that I love. You just say yes, you know? And then you make it happen. And That's what I did also with my, with my personal story. So there's no perfect time, there's no perfect anything, just act. And I love, you didn't talk about love, but I know happiness is love. And just love. And it's not only romantic love, like I love all of you people. I love people who haven't even met who are watching us here. And if we can spread that and see, and this is a case study of what can happen, not can happen, is happening right now, has happened. Those people are trained, and Dr. Dotres told us about that feedback from that principal. So act. And we live in a beautiful world full of challenges, but we have happiness inside us, and we can spread it out to others. Thank you.
So to me, it's about community, and whatever we do in a school, ultimately we're impacting the future citizens and the current citizens, right, of this community. And Miami is an incredible place. It's an incredible community with a lot of incredible partners. And I believe that together, we can make happiness an expectation in terms of where it occurs, in school, in work, in our own community. We can do this. It's well-being captured, I believe, in a very powerful word, happiness. And if we commit and we understand it and we're able to infuse it, I think our entire community would benefit from it. And Miami can do it. I know we can.
Yes. All right, a big round of applause for the panel. Thank you.